ओम अज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। नमो ओं विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। So here is a very scientific understanding about the creations of Brahmaji. So here it is said, Vidya Danam Tapah Satyam Dharmasya Yeti Padanicha. These four are the legs of religion. Dharmasya Yeti Padanicha. What are the four legs of religion? Vidya, Danam, Tapaha, Satyam. Education, charity, penance and truth. So, in order to propagate this, Brahmaji, he divided or he created the four orders of life: Brahmacharya, Grahastha, Vanaprastha and Sannyas. And also according to the different occupation, he created systematic classification of the social order as Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas and Shudras. It's interesting to see here that Brahmachari life is meant for education. Vidya, Prabhupada says, student life is meant for gaining transcendental knowledge. Dhanam, even though the Grahasthas, married life is a concession or with restraint for sense gratification, but it should be done with dhanam, with charitable disposition. Then gradually the person will advance in spiritual life. And then after undergoing the life of Grahastha, when one takes to Vanaprastha, the life is meant for penances or tapasya. And factually, when one takes sannyas after Vanaprastha life, after retired life, that is meant for preaching the absolute truth. So that's how these four are considered to be the four legs of religion. Brahmacharya meant for education, Grahastha life where sense gratification is allowed, it is meant for charity, and Vanaprastha life is meant for tapasya, penances, and sannyas life is meant for satyam or preaching the absolute truth. Prabhupada makes a very important point. Prabhupada says, the combined actions of all members of society make the whole situation favorable for the upliftment of mission of human life. This is very important. Combined actions, brahmacharis, grahasthas, vanaprasthas, sannyasis, brahmanas, vaishyas, shudras, kshatriyas, all of them. So, combined actions, they have all different duties, different works to perform, different actions to perform. So their combined actions make the whole situation favorable for upliftment of mission of human life. So why are all they created? Basically to accomplish the mission of human life. And then Prabhupada says, the beginning of this social institution is based on education meant for purifying the animal propensities of human being. That's why human life begins with brahmacharya. See? Education. What is that education? Prabhupada is saying education begins with purifying the animal propensities of human life. See? So brahmacharya means actually when we gradually control our mind and our senses, not to make them loose, not to make them free to wander everywhere for sense gratification, understanding that human life we have to train. See, until and unless the mind and senses are trained, it is very difficult to control. Everything requires training. Just like even a wild elephant, he can be controlled only when he is trained gradually. So from the very beginning, when the elephant is trained and he comes under the control, and then they utilize them in circus or for so many other different purposes, useful purpose. Similarly, until and unless the mind and senses are controlled, it is very difficult to understand the real purpose of life. We will fail to understand the real purpose of life. So Prabhupada is saying the education begins with brahmacharya, or getting the education of how to control our mind and senses, how to get rid of, how to purify our senses from animal propensities of human being. But of course, Prabhupada was very clear in his understanding. Even though Vedic literatures propose that the beginning is from brahmacharya, it is practical to understand, like we will understand in the next shloka, that there used to be two kinds of brahmachari. One is who, after undergoing brahmacharya training, he has become fixed in his consciousness. He has become fixed from trying to gratify his senses. His senses are not agitated anymore. And then, such a brahmachari does not require to enter into grahastha life. They become Naishtika brahmachari. See? Another Prabhupada says is those who do not become fixed in their consciousness, still their mind is agitated even after practice of brahmacharya, and they find it difficult. So such a person with the same spirit of brahmacharya should enter into grahastha ashram, and then gradually with restriction again he tries to advance in spiritual life, and then gradually to vanaprastha and then sannyas. So it is very important to note that no doubt Vedic literatures talk about, Bhagavad Gita specifically also talks about controlling the mind, the senses, everything, and brahmacharya is the beginning. But at the same time, we should also understand that we have to be realistic in our approach. It should not be that sometimes, in order to avoid responsibility, we think that grahastha life means taking responsibility of wife, taking responsibility of children. But this responsibility is meant to purify this sense gratification desire with a kind of restriction. So that responsibility is required. Otherwise, Prabhupada, he used to invent, very nice terms sometimes to describe some of his disciples. So once he coined a term, once he was traveling in the car with his disciples, he said, "Today I have a new theory." So the devotees were always amused, Prabhupada used to say new theories. So Prabhupada said, man is good, woman is good, but when they combine it is bad. So Prabhupada says, this is a theory. Man is good, woman is good, but when they combine it is bad. The result is bad. But then he also said, but don't become bachelor daddies. So Prabhupada described, he coined this new term, bachelor daddy. He said, what is the meaning of bachelor daddy? That our consciousness is absorbed in sense gratification, and we are keeping companies of women, everything. All sense gratification is there, but externally we are posing ourselves to be brahmachari. Prabhupada says, this is not at all welcome. They are called as cheaters by Krishna, pretenders by Krishna in Bhagavad Gita. So, we should search our consciousness. Is it because of prestige? Is it because brahmachari life I can avoid so-called burden of family life? So let me be just free like this. Is it because of that? That is not the idea. Our idea should be, I want to advance in spiritual life. Which is better for me? That is what we should see. You see? So if we feel that yes, my mind is not agitated, I have no problem at all, I will be able to carry on. Otherwise, if our mind is not getting fixed in Brahman, if it is not getting fixed in Krishna consciousness, it is better to take to Grahastha life than to be so-called brahmachari. You see? So this is what we should have a very clear understanding about. Otherwise, as Prabhupada says, we should not become bachelor daddies. Isn't it? Our consciousness is filled with all lusty desires, everything, and just to avoid that burden of family life, and we are thinking that let me be free and let me do whatever. See, brahmachari life, if a person can absorb himself in Krishna consciousness, that is very good. If the person is feeling already, thinking that, life has become already just a mechanical life, it has become somehow or other, I have to pass my life. That is not the goal of Krishna consciousness. So let me pass it as brahmachari. Rather than taking some kind of burden on my head, let me pass my life as brahmachari. That should not be the goal of life. Our life is not meant for passing like cats and dogs. Life is meant for absorption. Is my mind getting absorbed or is my mind disturbed? If my mind is disturbed, better to take to Grahastha life, become a gentleman, and then try to be in Krishna consciousness. That is the idea. Of course, it is not that right in the beginning we come in Krishna consciousness and we come with a mood of thinking that I have to enter into Grahastha life. No, that is not the idea. The idea is we try to remain brahmacharis, but if we find it difficult, of course it is not, thinking that if this thinking or thoughts of lusty desires are coming, I should change to Grahastha. That is not the idea. The idea is basically to understand that whether these thoughts, whether that consciousness, whether those lusty desires are agitating me, they are disturbing me, I am not able to fix my mind, I am not able to practice Krishna consciousness. Isn't it? And that is when actually generally you will find, this is my observance from quite a long time, even when I was in Bangalore, that then they think about, rather than changing the ashram, they will think about changing the place will give me, let me go from this place, let me change my services, all those things. Actually, disease may be something else. The disease may be that the mind is agitated, it is very difficult. But otherwise, whether in brahmachari life, grahastha life, or it is in sannyasa life, the whole goal is to absorb our mind in Krishna's thought. That we have to be sincere, we have to be honest to see whether I am able to absorb my mind As a brahmachari better, as a grahastha, as a vanaprastha, or as sannyasi. That nobody will give us certificate. That we have to decide on our own. We should not be pretenders. We should be realistic in our approach. The goal should be, it doesn't matter, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, whether you are Shudra, whether you are Brahmachari, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu very clear says, what matters is whether you are Krishna conscious. So, Prabhupada is saying, this is a beginning. Brahmacharya is a beginning, it is not the end. What is the end? Prabhupada is saying, the highest purificatory process is knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the purest of the pure. That is the real goal. If that can be achieved by following Brahmacharya principles of that, or it can be followed by taking Grahastha ashram with principle of Brahmacharya also. Not that Grahastha life is meant for sense gratification. That is not the idea. Grahastha life is also meant for, Prabhupada says, that if even in a Grahastha life person is following properly the principles of Brahmacharya, then he is also greater than a sannyasi, isn't it? We see the great examples of Bhakti Vinod Thakur, that even though he was a Grahastha, he was Paramahamsa, he was not an ordinary personality. At the same time, we also see his son, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Naishtika Brahmachari, he was also Paramahamsa. So that does not matter, isn't it? Whether one is a Naishtika Brahmachari, whether one is a Grahastha, that is immaterial. So that we should not be contemplating about. What we should be thinking about is purifying our senses and gradually going to this goal where we get the knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Actually, that is the whole Varnashrama system is set up to culture our consciousness. Our consciousness has to be trained, it has to be cultured, it has to be shaped. I was hearing in one of the classes that how people, karmis, they try to shape their bodies, right? They want to go to the gym. So they are shaping their bodies. For what? Sense gratification. Little bit more advanced people are there. They want to shape their intellect. They want to train and culture their intellect, their mind. Isn't it? So they are also ultimately for what? For sense gratification. Devotees are not interested in shaping their body, in shaping their mind or intellect. They are interested in the most fundamental, shaping our consciousness. That should be our goal. In spiritual life, the goal of a devotee is to shape our consciousness. And this system of Varnashrama, starting from Brahmacharya, is meant to shape our consciousness. That is the most important mission of human life. Shape our consciousness to make it Krishna consciousness. That is the highest consciousness, that we will see. Shaping our consciousness begins with restrictions. Trying to avoid sense gratification, purifying our senses. That is the beginning of shaping of our consciousness. And when is the consciousness ultimately shaped? That time one does not require shaping the consciousness. One does not require to restrict the senses. The senses being absorbed in Krishna automatically becomes controlled. That time we don't require trying to shape it, trying to control it, trying to restrain it. No. When a pure devotee is absorbed, his mind is absorbed in thoughts of Krishna, automatically all senses becomes controlled. Mind is under control, everything comes under control. See? So, this is what we should all be thinking about. What is my consciousness at this moment? Materially afflicted? What is my attitude towards Krishna consciousness, towards services, towards sadhana? How to shape that? What is my thoughts? What is my thinking? What are my actions? Isn't it? All these things we have to try to shape in our Krishna consciousness. So that is the most important thing which we should be trying. And it is very interesting to note the consciousness of pure devotees. In one place in Bhagavatam, when it is with respect to Vidura, Srimad Bhagavatam describes Vidura lived his life with Krishna consciousness, and at the time of death also, he left his body with complete Krishna consciousness. Very beautiful word which is described in Bhagavatam is Krishna Aveshena. The mind being completely absorbed. Chitta Krishna Aveshena. His mind was completely overwhelmed. See, Prabhupada describes overwhelmed or completely absorbed in thoughts of Krishna. So, this is the state of mind finally we have to achieve. When, by restraining senses, gradually trying in that direction, what is the goal? Goal is not just to control the senses, just to control the mind. Goal is gradually to shape our consciousness in such a way that all the times mind becomes absorbed in Krishna. Mind is overwhelmed with thoughts of Krishna. That should be the goal of life. And that is what Prabhupada is saying. That is the highest education. Education, where does it begin? Gaur-Gopal. Begins with brahmacharya. Means what? Trying to control our mind and senses. But it doesn't end there. Where does it end? Prabhupada says the highest education is purificatory process is knowledge of Supreme Personality of Godhead, the purest of the pure. That is where actually gradually our consciousness should lead us. Krishna in Bhagavad Gita nicely describes about this. That actually this system of our Vedic culture is a gradual elevation system. First, karmis are molded from their karmic propensities to karma yoga. That whatever you are doing, anyway you are doing something. Do it, renounce the result of your activities. Do not be attached to the result of your activities. Renounce it in the service of the Lord. You see? So, from karma, when a person is karmi, fruitive worker, gradually he can become a karma yogi. And then gradually from karma yogi, he can elevate himself to jnana yogi, where he understands all the activities should be done for that absolute. Jnana yogi is trying to search that absolute. As a karma yogi, he is not aware about that Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is asked to renounce the fruit of his actions. You see. From jnana yogi, when his knowledge becomes concentrated, when he understands that there is Paramatma on whom I should concentrate, he becomes aware of that Supreme Personality of Godhead. He concentrates in his heart on Paramatma. That is dhyana yogi. So, from karma to karma yogi, to jnana yogi, to dhyana yogi. And eventually, when a person serves the Supreme Personality of Godhead with his senses, with loving devotion, when he serves, he is topmost. He is called Bhakti Yogi. That Krishna describes very beautifully in the 6th chapter end of Bhagavad Gita. Krishna says, Tapasvibhyo adhiko yogi, jnanibhyopi mato adhikaha, karmabhischa adhiko yogi, tasmat yogi bhavarjuna. Yogi is greater than the ascetic, greater than the empirist, greater than the fruitive worker. Therefore, Arjuna, in all circumstances, be a yogi. So Krishna is describing that this is gradual elevation. Karma yogi, karmi is there. Fruitive worker is there. Greater than them is jnani. Greater than him is some ascetic, somebody performing tapasya. But even greater than the ascetic is yogi. Then Krishna explains So there are many kinds of yogis. Yogi is the greatest. Yogi means when his connection has begun with Krishna, with the Supreme Personality, with Absolute Truth. So then Krishna explains, out of all yogis, the yogi who is very intimately connected with me in devotional service is the best of all. So then Krishna says, yogi nam api sarvesham mad gatena antaratmana shraddhavan bhajate yomam same yukta tamo mataha. He is the greatest of the yogis. Then, next chapter, Krishna explains very beautifully that how this yogi, how he is considered to be the greatest, what are his symptoms. So Krishna says, Maya asaktamana partha yogam yunjan madashrayah ashamshayam samagramma yatha gnasasi tashrunu. Krishna is explaining this yoga yunjan. How is he connected to me? Yoga yunjan means, yuktaha, same thing. How that yogi becomes intimately connected to the Supreme Lord. Krishna is saying two very important things. One is, Maya asakta mana. Mana should be absorbed, attached to Krishna. You see? Mind has to become attached to Krishna. Maya asakta mana. And another important thing Krishna says is, Madashrayaha. Under my shelter, we have to surrender to Krishna. We have to serve Krishna. You see, we have to take shelter of the Supreme Lord. So, with these two very important things, when a person molds his life in such a way that he becomes gradually very, very attached to Krishna and he has taken shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then Krishna says, Ashamshayam samagramma. Then he will know Krishna completely without any doubt. That is perfection of knowledge. As Prabhupada is saying, the highest purificatory process is knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the purest of pure. So without doubt, if we want to know Krishna, then we have to take shelter of Krishna and we have to absorb our mind in thoughts of Krishna. Then it is possible. So this whole Varnashrama process, which specifically Prabhupada has introduced in Krishna consciousness, that gradually with all our abilities, with all our whatever we have got, talents we have got with us, we try to serve Krishna, we try to attend the sadhana, and with the combination of sadhana and the service, gradually our mind will become attached to Krishna. Because the whole process of sadhana and service is meant for what? For the same thing. Why are we chanting? To remember Krishna. Why are we going for life membership? It is not disconnected. Prabhupada says, you are not, when somebody is going for book distribution, there's so many magazines people are selling. India Today, newspapers are being sold. Every day you will find people going on, cycles and flying newspaper in somebody's house. Everywhere you can see. Devotees are also going. Devotees also go for book distribution. And with so much endeavor, the devotee is trying to distribute. Why? He knows this is not ordinary book. This is Krishna book. I am selling Krishna book. The profit of this will also go for Krishna. Book somebody will receive. They will also benefit being Krishna conscious. So everything is Krishna consciousness. Endeavor, result, everything. So all the services, whatever Prabhupada has given, sadhana Prabhupada has given, whole goal of all of them is to absorb our mind in Krishna, take shelter of Krishna. And then we will be able to achieve the highest goal of our life, which we are seeing here. Prabhupada is saying, highest purificatory process is knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the purest of pure. So we'll stop with this. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki